our postmodern age of division, anger, anxiety, and confusion, the most dangerous weapon you have is your own mind.
Take control! Question everything!
This is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast.
There is a moment in the oldest story that we have, the Epic of Gilgamesh, nearly 4,000 years old, when the hero is standing on the top of the entire world. Gilgamesh is king. He's powerful, celebrated, victorious, a man who has slain the bull of heaven and cut down Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, and who now walks through his own city while people lean out of the windows and sing his name back to him. He is drenched in glory. He is standing in the exact spot every hero dreams of standing. And then his best friend dies. Now, here's the part that breaks him. Enkidu doesn't fall. His best friend doesn't fall in battle. There's no last stand. There's no blaze of glory. There's nothing the songs can use. He just simply gets sick. He lies in bed for 12 days, and on the 12th day, he's gone. And Gilgamesh, the king, the warrior, the slayer of monsters, comes completely undone. Because all at once, this is about more than grief. For the first time in his entire life, Gilgamesh looks mortality dead in the face and understands the one thing: all his victories were built to keep him from understanding that the same death which took Enkidu has his own name written on it too. And in that instant, the journey he thought he was on, the glory road, the victory lap, the highlight reel, doesn't really matter all that much. He thought he had already won and reached the final destination, but in that instant, his perspective quietly turns into something else, something darker, something far more real. So he leaves the city. He wanders out into the wilderness, crosses tunnels of absolute darkness, travels to the very ends of the earth, chasing a cure for the one sickness nobody can outrun: death. And somewhere out there in the dark, the thrill burns off, the adventure burns off, and what's left when all of it is gone is just the weight of a reality that he can never escape. So when we look at mythology, that is the initiation, and that's exactly where we are today. The initiation definitely isn't always a divine strike of inspiration. It comes in many, many forms. And in myth and in movie, and yes, even in your own life, that's what we're looking at today. I'm Dr. David Hopkins. I'm a humanities professor. I'm your host and guide of the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. And we take books and we tear them apart and we read them. And we walk right now, we're in the middle of walking through Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces, specifically just focusing on the first 4 chapters of this book. I hope you'll get it. I hope you'll read the whole thing. It's an amazing book. But if you don't even want to buy it, heck, you can just Google it. You can find version after version of it just out there for free in PDF form. But either way, welcome back or welcome for the first time. Pull up a chair, put in your earbuds, climb on the treadmill, or however you're going to listen today. I'm glad you're here because we're going to go deep. So episode 2 left our hero crossing the threshold And if there was a little motivational speaker energy in that moment, that I'm doing this, I'm all in, nothing can stop me now, well, today is the day reality arrives, because going all in, it sounds incredibly romantic, right up until reality sends the invoice. And as we're going to see today, there's always an invoice, and you have to be prepared for it when you begin the journey. So when you commit to a real journey, not dabbling in it, not a tiny toe in the water and then pulling it out, but the actual thing, the journey gets hard. It gets very hard, and it hurts. Maybe in your body, maybe in your heart, maybe somewhere intellectually, in your mind that you can't quite reach. But one way or another, when you take on a task that is bigger than you and where you have been, it is going to hurt. And there is no clean little road around that part. One quick word before we get going, Campbell. Before we go in, I do hope you'll read this yourself. I mean that. This is not Oprah's book club, and that's not what we do here. I pull out major movements and major ideas from these chapters, and we wrestle with them. But I want you in the text doing your own reading, drawing your own conclusion, getting the full perspective of the chapter. And that's my challenge to you. So let's get into it. The road of trials. So the hero crossed. The ordinary world is behind them, and the real journey, the one underneath the one they thought they signed up for, it finally begins in earnest. So Campbell calls this stretch the road of trials. And before we take a single step down this road, you have to understand what a trial actually is, because our modern society has corrupted the word almost past recognition. I swear, sometimes I see social media posts and it seems Americans think difficulty means inconvenience, which ultimately, of course, leads to trauma. Everybody's traumatized. It's so grotesquely weak. Slow Wi-Fi, traffic on the interstate, the wrong coffee order, the package that shows up in 3 hours instead of 2, the meeting that should have just been an email is not trauma. It's an inconvenience. It's annoying. I'm not going to pretend it isn't annoying, but it's not suffering and it's not a trial. That is just an inconvenience. So can we all of us get a little perspective on what suffering is and what is just mildly annoying and an inconvenience in our super simple, immediate gratification world? And please, can we just stop making a mountain out of a tiny little molehill? Because Campbell's trials, what we're reading about, are a different species of things entirely. These are not obstacles standing between the hero and the success. These are surgeries. Every trial reaches in and takes something out. Something the hero believes was part of who they were. Something they had carried so long that felt like a bone. It was never bone. It was an illusion. It was dead weight that had been riding along the whole time, disguised as the hero's identity. These things had to be metaphorically, or sometimes actually physically removed, painfully removed, to gain a new freedom and perspective. Let's take Perseus inside the book. He had to face Medusa. Remember Medusa, the snakes and a thing so terrible that you couldn't look straight at her or you would turn into stone. And notice how Perseus wins in this myth. He can't charge straight at her. He can't overpower her. He cannot meet her head on and live, because he'd be turned to stone. So he has to take a different stance. He raises a polished shield up And then he comes at her sideways through the reflection. That one detail carries more than it looks like it does, because the trial kills off an illusion. The illusion that courage always means the direct charge, the frontal assault, the head-on collision. Sometimes the bravest, the wisest thing a human being can do is come at things sideways. And that's not cowardice. That's maturity. And that is exactly where the cheap drugstore version of self-help loses the plot completely against these wisdom mythology stories. That the trials are not there to pump you up. They're not resistance training to build your confidence. They're not cute little character building exercises at some work retreat that you can post about afterward on Instagram. The trials, the real trials, the real challenges will strip you down. They're going to burn off an illusion. And we are all carrying a stockpile of illusions. Lord knows I am, and I'm sure you are too. The illusion that we're more intelligent than we actually are. The illusion that our narrow perspective is just plain objective truth and the other people are crazy, silly, stupid. The illusion that the thing we proudly call our wisdom isn't half the time only our oldest biases that are wearing a nicer vocabulary. So every trial on the road that our heroes face in the monomyth, it's not adding to yet in this step. We're not adding to, we're burning away. And yes, it hurts, and it hurts the heroes, and it hurts you when you're going through these trials. It's supposed to hurt because you cannot drag the old self into the new life, and you cannot reach out and receive what the journey is holding for you while both your hands are still clenched, white-knuckled around everything you carried from home in your prior life. You have to give it up. That is one of Campbell's deepest, quietest insights into the mythologies that have been told for centuries. The hero walks up to each trial thinking, this is a test of everything I've got. And the hero walks away understanding it was the reverse all along. It was never a test of what the hero had. It was a test of what they were finally willing to lose and rebuild new. That's the road. That's the road of trials. That's the whole brutal, holy point of this particular chapter. And here comes the part nobody wants printed on the poster. The suffering that exists is not a side effect of transformation. Suffering is the entire mechanism of transformation. Listen to that one more time and let it sit here. Suffering is the mechanism for transformation. Anybody promising you the transformation without suffering is selling a fantasy on an installment plan. There is no success without the suffering, no resurrection without the death, no wisdom that doesn't cost you something dearly. Our modern American culture peddles the nonsense that you can lose weight, you can gain muscle, you can gain intellect, you can get rich, you can get fit, you can gain a loving relationship. Take this pill, read this book, follow these 5 steps, take this course, buy this program for $19.99, and voila, like magic, you win. No side effects. No bad side results. It's just that easy. But that doesn't work. It can't work. It's never worked that way. Nothing, and I do mean nothing of value, is gained without struggle, without pain. This is where the true transformation happens. And this is what the monomyth teaches us over and over again. Now, sure, in life, there are moments of luck. Heck, if if I would someday win $50 million in the lottery, I'm not turning it down, of course. And the purchase of the ticket surely wasn't very painful. I just walked up to a counter, dropped a couple bucks down, and they printed me a ticket, and then voila, I win. But when you think about that story, that's not really the journey. That isn't where the real transformation happened. If any transformation at all will happen, the real trials, the real journey is after I have the money securely in my account. How do I handle it? How do I manage it? What decisions do I make? Who do I impact, both negative and positive? Every serious mythological system the human race has ever built knew this is in its bones. Christianity knows it. Buddhism knows it. Hinduism knows it. Every ancient story that survived long enough to reach our ears. The Greeks, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, they all knew it. And then somewhere along the line, probably, around our modern era and the birth of the machine, as we talked about in the King's North book, somewhere in the last century or two of soft living, of easy comfort, modern culture, we've quietly forgotten this, and that forgetting has left us fragile, and it's left us weak. It's trained us to read our own suffering as proof that something has gone wrong, that we took a wrong turn somewhere along the way, that we're the victim, that we ought to file a complaint with management. But myth tells you something older and harder and far more useful than that. Sometimes the suffering isn't the sign that you failed. Sometimes it's actually the first sign that you're finally on the path. So as the hero on this path moves deeper down the road, the next part that Campbell talks about is an encounter, and two encounters actually, one with a goddess and one an atonement with the Father. Now, I have to say straight with you before we take another step, Campbell wrote this book in 1949, and in places when you're reading it, it feels exactly like a man writing in 1949 would write. I promised you back in episode 1 that we would argue with Campbell wherever Campbell needed arguing. And this is one of those places it can come across the very sexist for some people. But underneath the dated packaging, no matter who you are, man, woman, these two stages were never really about gender at all. If we just strip out all that talk, they're about two deep principles that are anchored in the feminine and the masculine, but they live inside of every single human being walking the earth. And I think you'll get it when I help explain it. So if you're reading the book and you're looking at that context, try and consider it in this light. And most of us burn an astonishing amount of our life avoiding both of these two personas that show up in myth a lot. So let's start with the goddess. And before anybody panics on me, no, I'm not about to throw weird Instagram spirituality at you at all. The goddess is not at its heart about meeting some magical woman out on a road. It's about the hero finally encountering the feminine principle inside. And when we look at Jung, we look at the subconscious, and we look at the personifications of the male and the female. They mean something. And for Campbell, what he found in the mythology was this. When you encounter the feminine, you are encountering receptivity, stillness, the capacity to receive something instead of forever striving and grasping and producing and conquering to get it. The ability to sit inside a tension without immediately lunging to fix it. Love that isn't transactional. Love that doesn't keep a running tally in the back of the room. Love that never once whispers, I'll give it if you give. I'll stop here. In our modern world, yes, you might be thinking, yeah, that you might say that's the image of the feminine, but let me tell you what, I know some alpha women that are the exact opposite that, of course. And yes, of course, on the next one, when we get to atonement with the Father too. But follow along. The archetypes are real and exist, and they emerge inside the mythologies. And most of us, though, back to this, we're catastrophically bad at this, myself included. We're raised inside a culture that worships motion, that chants push harder, build more, scale faster, optimize every waking minute. Culture that has gotten so good at moving, it can no longer sit still and quiet for, 4 unbroken minutes without a hand drifting towards our phone. And we call that strength. It's not strength. It's dependency. In a fancy suit. In the old myths, this encounter almost arrives as a sort of peace, as grace, as something the hero can't seize, can't earn, you can't force into being. It's something that can only be received with open hands. And it's an important spot because the trials are so rough. But there comes a point where our hero, in the eye of the storm, is able to sit back and receive. There's not conquest here. There's just reception of a power, an infinite power, an internal power, a power that brings peace in the storm. I'm a huge sports fan, and there's something amazing to watch with athletes that are performing at the highest level in the biggest, most intense games. They kind of have a peace about them. And as the world's swirling around them, they have just a laser sharp focus and peace. And that's where our hero is experiencing in this moment. Because it's something that is rare, something that gives power when you would think maybe it wouldn't. But then we come to the Father figure and atonement with the Father. That's the next part of this particular chapter. And for a great many people, this is one they're extremely afraid of. The Father figure is authority. It's judgment. It's law. The standard. The measuring rod they have been held up against their entire life. Or worse, the one they swallowed whole years ago and now hold up against themselves. And let me say the uncomfortable thing here. For an enormous number of people, the harshest father they have ever known is not that external man that raised them. It's a voice in their own head. The one that runs all day with judgment. Underneath everything, never resting. You're not enough. Can't do that yet. You're still failing. You're still behind. You're still not worthy. You still haven't earned your rest. Still haven't earned your love. Still haven't earned one single quiet moment of peace. That voice, I should be further along by now than I am. And this voice, left unquestioned, can run the entire human life straight into the ground. And our hero has got to confront this figure. So here's the question that actually matters. Why do these two encounters carry so much weight? Why must, in the middle of the trials and the struggles and the tribulations, why must the hero stop and turn and face them? Why must you stop and turn and face the things inside yourself that you have spent years getting so skilled to avoid? And in myth, it's not always equal billing to the goddess and the father figure. Sometimes the father figure dominates. Sometimes the goddess figure dominates. One or the other. And in your own life, maybe one or the other dominates. Or maybe you have components of both of them, which is probably the most frequent form in myth that they show up. But one way or another, whether you like it or not, and whether you want to admit it or not right now while you're listening, Everything you avoid is running you. Well, we like to think burying stuff deep means you have conquered something. It's just a lie. It's a lie. I want that one to really land with you and sit on it. Everything you avoid is running you. The thing you won't look at is making decisions for you. That conversation you won't have because you're too afraid to, it's holding you back. The wound you buried alive, still down there in the dark with both hands on the wheel. The fear you refuse to even name is quietly drawing the borders around your life. The unintegrated feminine principle, the inability to rest or to receive or to love without an invoice attached to it, turns every relationship you have into a scorecard. And that unintegrated masculine principle, the judge, you never once thought to question, turns every achievement you'll ever earn into a kind of slavery where you can never enjoy the win, never finish the work, never accept the compliment, never quite believe the good thing even while it's happening to you, because somewhere down deep, you're still trying to earn a passing grade from a court you never even knew you were standing in. So the monomyth personifies this. I love how Star Wars so clearly in modern myth demonstrates this. Luke Skywalker finds his goddess in Leia. Then at the very end of that first Star Wars episode, he has to confront the father figure. And in this movie, also his actual father, Darth Vader. He cannot break free from his old self without both. He needed Leia along the journey because he was lost and stuck and confused, and he just needed that love. And at the end, for him to emerge a Jedi Knight of the highest order, he had to confront his father, Darth Vader. So the real journey, the true one in your life, has a kind of brutal honesty built into its bone. Into its bones. What you will not face on your own willingly, the road will eventually rise up and force you to face it anyway, whether you're ready or not. And that's why these encounters exist. Not to punish the hero, but to complete the hero. And maybe, just maybe, that is what this hard season of your life is actually doing to you right now. Not punishing you, but trying and prompting to complete you. Now, we arrive at the next movement in this particular chapter is called the abyss, and we arrive at the center of the journey, the place every myth eventually reaches, the place no hero wants to go, the abyss. This is the point in the story where the trials stop feeling like difficult challenges and start feeling like annihilation. The hero's no longer merely struggling against obstacles out there in the world or internally in their brain. Now the conflict takes a very dark turn. A very dark interior terrain most people spend an entire life trying not to acknowledge. This is the descent. This is the underworld. This is the moment in a movie or a play or a story where it is the darkest night. It is the dark night of the soul, and every myth worth remembering understands this with brutal clarity. If transformation is real, truly real, then eventually something inside of you must die and be replaced. Could be a self-concept, an identity, an illusion. A story you've told yourself so long you mistake it for truth. Something has to go. And our heroes must let something go to be rebuilt. And this is where modern culture gets really confused. We talk endlessly about growth, personal growth, professional growth, spiritual growth, emotional growth. We love the language of becoming something more. We buy the books, we listen to the podcasts, attend the seminars, we nod while someone on stage tells us to become our best selves. Wonderful, really. But you know what's missing from our modern version of this? It's the cost. Because growth sounds incredibly inspiring and good and positive and wonderful and something people pay a lot of money for. Death. Now that just sounds terrifying. And yet the myth keeps insisting on the same uncomfortable truth for thousands of years across so many different cultures that the abyss is not the setback. It's not the unfortunate detour of the road. The abyss is actually the transformation. That's the part people miss. Let me make this really concrete because this is the part that matters. Remember the Rocky movies? Rocky's such an awesome example, especially that first one. So Rocky Balboa, some uneducated, poor nobody from the streets of Philadelphia, wannabe amateur boxer, living a life that, well, nobody would really want if we're going to be honest about it. But Rocky's a fighter. In those Rocky movies, we all love him. And especially those scenes when he finally goes all in with his training. Every film he starts slow. He's out of shape. He's slow. He's unfocused. He's uncommitted. He's showered in some sort of a doubt that's just all consuming him mentally. I always recall the scene where Mickey, who was his trainer, tells Rocky he's too slow and he can't beat Apollo Creed. So Mickey, the trainer, makes him chase chickens around so that he'll get quicker. And he fails miserably. He's a brawler. He's a street puncher. And now Mickey's trying to turn him into something that he definitely physically is not. And he fails at catching the chicken again, and again. But eventually, after failing over and over and so much self-doubt, self-loathing, his personal life's messed up, cue the music, cue the Rocky music, and he starts getting bigger, stronger, quicker. And as that theme music reaches a crescendo in those training videos, he finally catches the chicken, and Mickey, who wanted him to move like greased lightning, achieves the goal. But it was through dark despair, physically, emotionally, intellectually, to get there. Now, here's what I need you to see. Most people hear that and think, okay, that's the cost, that's suffering, and the hero has to pay to earn the transformation. That shows up later, blah, blah, blah. Sort of right, but not really. If we look at the myths and the story closer, the stripping away of his prior self, that was actually the transformation. Not the moment Rocky actually caught the chicken. The transformation was when he never quit in the darkness through the failures and the pain, and he kept pushing and he kept pushing and he kept failing, and it was painful. The victory part was the cool part of the movie where the music crescendos and he jumps around and he celebrates. But really, the transformation was every day that Rocky failed. Getting up at 3:34 in the morning, cracking open some raw eggs and drinking them straight. And he kept getting back up over and over again. Every time he missed the chicken, chasing it around, that was the work of the transformation. Because why? He never quit. Heroes don't quit. Postmodern material culture has no language or use for this because we worship the win, the Instagram post of our success, the look at me and how great I am and all I've achieved in my wonderful job and car and house. But the real success that we see in the monomyth is in the dark, alone, struggling, not giving up, not quitting. when you're in the lab doing the work when nobody sees you, that's where the real win is going to happen. Not the trophy at the end, because in pushing further than you have ever been and stripping away the old self, you build the mental muscle and habit to make that who you are. You are a new you. You build a mentality that what I do is I overcome. What I do is I never quit. What I do is I don't blame other people. What I do is I don't call myself a victim. You push and you push even when you're failing. That is the true superpower of the hero in the monomyth. Just for fun, let me pull in another story from Hero with 1,000 Faces and switches gears here just to a new angle. Same concept, just a new angle to give you context. That battle in the dark is both internal and external equally. Like Rocky, he had both internal and external battles. So we take Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita. Here's one of the greatest warriors in Indian literature. He's on the battlefield, bow in hand, fully trained for the conflict ahead. He should be ready. He has discipline, he has skill, he has strength, reputation. Everything in the world says he's the man. And then he looks across the field. He sees teachers, friends, family, people he loves. And he sort of collapses. Wasn't what he expected. Collapse wasn't physical when you read it. It was existential. And so his bow slips out of his hands. His body trembles. And all of a sudden, this brave, huge, imposing warrior figure, when he sees the enemy across him, he evaporates. Why? Why did he do that? Because he just wanted the physical outward appearance battle, the external. But what he stood across was an internal battle. Teachers, guides, religious figures. He believed he understood duty. He believed he understood righteousness. He believed he knew exactly who he was. And in one devastating moment, this brave warrior is struck down and his certainty cracks. That's the abyss. Not ignorance. The collapse of false certainty. You know you've had moments in your life where you've just felt like, I just cannot do this anymore. The hero in the monomyth is going to say, I can't do this, but I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep moving forward. Many of us do not break when life becomes hard. We break when the story that held our life together stops making sense. That's different. That's losing comfort in pain. Losing comfort is painful. Losing meaning is disorienting in an entirely different way. It feels like gravity falling, like the floor disappearing beneath us. Like walking up inside your own life and suddenly realizing the map you trusted is just a totally different place. And if you live long enough, chances are you know what I'm talking about. Maybe that certainty was shattered by divorce. Maybe loss of a loved one. Maybe a life-threatening illness. Maybe someone close to you betrayed you. Maybe you just hit a spot where you're completely burned out. That's the place I'm talking about. Your certain world you thought you had all organized and in place falls apart. Maybe one quiet Tuesday morning when you looked around at the life worked so hard to build and had the deeply unsettling realization that something essential was just missing. See, with our friend here, Arjuna, he thought he had everything completely organized and in place, and he was at the top of the world. But in one instant, it was shattered. No explosion, no drama, just silence, and this awful recognition that you can no longer pretend. That's the abyss too. Many of the myths follow this pattern. And here's the paradox. The abyss feels like destruction, but very often that's the first step in revelation and recovery. Because the abyss strips away every false god you were ever serving. Status, approval, image, achievement, control, drugs, sex, alcohol, the things you thought would save you begin to fail one by one until eventually you're left with something terrifying and liberating all at the same time. What remains when illusion burns away and you survive it? And that question, painful as it is, may be one of the holiest questions a human being can face. What remains when the illusion burns away? So if you're in the abyss right now, if life feels disorienting, heavy, stripped bare, I want to offer you something myth has always understood. It's not the end of your story. This may be that part of the death of the old you that's required for that next chapter in your life. If you're in this season, you are in the abyss of the monomyth. The abyss can feel like ending, but often it's just the next initiation. And we're going to explore this in the next and the final episode. I'm Dr. David Hopkins, and this is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast.